And we're live. Hello and welcome to the 86th episode of Game Theory Gang. I'm Matty Allen with Tobiwan Hexobi, Hexfire, ChrispyMan of Hexfire.io, and our special guests tonight, Jonni Sachs and Axis Alive. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate
Glad
you
to
for
be
having
here.
me back on. When I heard Jonni was going to be on to talk calm after the big movements in the calm brand the last couple days, I thought maybe it would be an optimal time to hop in and give my hot take.
Awesome. Yeah, there's lots to cover tonight. I know Jonni brought prepared material. And just to set the stage for what's going on here, on the thumbnail, it says 33X for calm. And that is actually a special kind of calm that we'll probably get into later in the story. But there's a kind of calm that started on Ethereum and then got bridged in at a loss to whoever bridged it in. And that's the version that had this huge pump on Pulse Chain the other day. And so we might get into the game theory of that at some point. But another point that I wanted to make, which is really exciting, is I made a post here on Twitter earlier, and it shows what an $86 HEX stake did in the past 3 years. And so you can see that the price of HEX is about the same as it was back in 2020 today. And so 10,000 HEX is still worth about $86. And so the price chart, I think, is lying to you. And in fact, if you were somebody who was long-term minded and gave up your ability to sell, sure, it would have been nice to time the top at $5,000 for 10,000 HEX. But for me, you know, I got all these airdrops on top of getting, you know, more than doubling my principal. And so, you know, if I just look at the EHEX, it'd be worth $209 today with the interest. And then that doesn't include $369 worth of HEX. And then what we're going to be talking about today is where even just having 1.4 TShares cooking for 3 years got me $8 worth of COM. And then because I restaked on the Pulse Chain side, that turned into $49 worth of liquid COM today that is sitting there for me. And so that's part of, I think, this secret weapon that Jonni's going to talk about. And if any of you want to claim your COM, I would really appreciate it if you use my referral link. It's hexcommunity.com. It gives me 1% and it doesn't cost you anything. So let's see. Oh, we got ChrispyMan here too. Welcome, ChrispyMan.
Yay, Maddie. I tried to change that avatar. That dropped me.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So that's kind of my intro. Is like, this is a very valuable airdrop to all people who have HEX stakes, whether you had a HEX stake already and it's still sitting there, or whether you're going to make a HEX stake in the future. Those are all situations where you will be able to claim COM. And it seems most valuable on the Pulse Chain side of things. So that's a good intro for Jonni and Axis and others to start chiming in on what they've got to present here today.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and get this started. I do have a presentation for everyone today. Maddie, I really appreciate you having me on the stream. Just to go ahead and present what I believe to be, and so I hope everybody got a chance to see my previous stream where I was on with Cabana. I also hope everybody got a chance to see the stream that I put on my channel that went through a comprehensive overview of what this secret weapon is that I've been talking about lately.
And I linked to those streams in the description below for people to check out.
Definitely. Yeah. And anytime you get a chance to see that, it's going to be a comprehensive review of everything. Some of the feedback that I've got is that it does need to be simplified and put into some bite-sized pieces for some digestible content for people to understand. So one of the things that I want to say about this before getting into it is that, there's a lot of mechanics going on under the hood with this thing. But just like with your car, you don't necessarily need to really understand what's going on under the hood fully. It does really come down to just a simple call to action. So you'll see that as we go through this. But I believe that this is this is a new innovation in crypto, and I believe that it is the most powerful thing that we've ever seen in crypto to date. So I'm excited to get into it. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to be going through here with everybody. So let's get it started.
Awesome.
All right, so I've got up here, calling this the secret weapon and the HEX Fusion, and why it is guaranteed to burn an increasing amount of hex over time. So let's go ahead and dive into what is COM. All right, so COM is a token. For those who don't know, it was launched back in January, and it was created by a developer in the HEX community who goes by the name of Kodiak. Now, so I am not the founder of COM. I just happen to be the person who discovered the power behind the token. So simply put, the system that Kodiak designed was created to tokenize HEX shares. Okay, and the genius behind it is that he unlocked the longer pays better feature in HEX, and he made it applicable to reward 15-year stakers at a much higher rate than the 10-year stakers. So we know that in HEX, when you stake for 10 years, that maximizes your longer pays better bonus. Well, with this system, it's actually been unlocked so that it can go further than the 10-year max, and it actually substantially rewards 15-year stakers to a much higher degree than the 10-year stakers, and so on and so on as the years go by. So actually in this system, you'll come to see that 15-year stakers get 50 times the reward that a 1-year staker gets. And so you'll see where that kind of aspect and mechanic opens up the power behind this thing that we're going to get into. So it is a system that rewards HEX stakers and pays the highest rewards to the longest stakers. There's also other great features in this system because it pays rewards to the people who run good accounting to maintain the health of the staking system in HEX. And then another great feature is that it reactivates the referral program in HEX and keeps it running forever. So we had the referral program historically in HEX for the first year during the launch phase. And that turned out to be a very good system for onboarding people into HEX, but it ended after the first year. One of the things that Richard mentioned along the way during that first year is that he would love it if somebody would reactivate the HEX system through a third-party mechanism. So we have that now, and this, I believe, is going to be the system that takes that to the next level. So without getting into too much detail right now, because there is a lot of detail, it is just basically a system that promotes healthy staking behaviors in HEX. So the next thing we want to get into is why COM. Okay, so there's a pricing ratio between COM and HEX. That pricing ratio, it generates a reward that I'm looking at as a coupon. So basically, this coupon acts like a cashback redemption for the value that you staked in HEX. It's designed to reward long stakers disproportionately more than short stakers. And this mechanism of rewarding the longest stakers creates an incentive to stake longer, where whenever a user is about to stake their HEX, they now are faced with a second thought on that decision. Because they stake much longer with this reward, they'll be faced with the decision that they should probably stake much longer so that they can capture that cashback reward, this coupon that I'm talking about. So since the user who's going to create a new stake has to weigh out the reward in their mind before setting the terms of their stake, COM makes it more likely for the global average stake length in HEX to rise. But it's not just more likely to rise the average stake length, it's virtually guaranteed. This is because as the coupon rate rises, the coupon received for staking long becomes too overwhelming for the user to ignore. And that's the aspect of that, as you approach the 15 years in your stake length, you're getting rewarded at a much higher rate than any years prior. So ultimately, the main reason why COM deserves adoption from HEX holders is because it operates as a decentralized automatic marketing network for HEX.
Damn.
I'm calling this as an acronym a DAM. Okay, I believe it's very powerful. It's the main thing, the main aspect here that I believe is the reason we want to be supporting this system. Because when you hear that term, I think that it's ringing in your head as some sort of, little marketing term or something like of the sort. But I would actually go as far as to say that this actually is a decentralized marketing network that is automatic. And it's the first time we've ever seen such a thing in crypto. There has been other systems that do sort of forms of automatic marketing, but the distinguishing factor between this one is that it's automatic. And I'm going to get into why that automatic marketing actually has a 100% conversion rate on the marketing expense, which is extremely powerful.
Yeah, that's a little bit down the pipe here a little bit. Can I got to address, we got a comment here. Thomas Anderson says, what's the catch? There's always a catch. Nothing is free. And so if I can just divert for just give me 2 minutes here to kind of explain why this is possible at this specific point in the history of HEX, is because PCOM was so ridiculously undervalued relative to the price of HEX. Now remember, in cryptocurrency, noobs think of things in terms of dollar value, but crypto pros, they think of things in terms of ratios of coins. Now the ratio and dollar value, for that matter, of PCOM on Pulse Chain was so low that it allowed market makers to come in and absorb a tremendous amount of supply and raise the price of PCOM 170x. In doing so, they created this opportunity for new people coming in to stake their HEX for any length of time, but the longer, the more COM they'll be able to claim, to get redeemable COM that actually has value. So they are what you call value creators or market makers, right? They came in and they created price floors on the COM chart, and they created the opportunity for new people to step in, or old stakers alike, come in, buy HEX off the market. That's the free part. Like, no, of course it's not free. You have to go buy HEX off the market and stake it long to get the rebate, to get back COM. The longer you stake, the more COM you get back. And then you can take that COM, which is now valued at, 6% of a HEX stake, roughly, a max length stake. So you can get 6% back in today's terms. Now, as the PCOM price rises, if the PCOM price rises at a faster clip than the HEX price rises, which is a possibility because it's a much smaller price when you're pricing it in dollars, it can potentially, if demand increases, actually outpace the growth rate of HEX, because HEX is, trading between 1 and 2 cents. And, as it goes up in price, it'll get harder and harder to push that clip higher. But COM has so much more headroom because so much of the supply can be absorbed at such a small price. We're talking like 10 digits of zeros, and then you get a number, and that's what it's valued in dollars. So long story short, this as HEX is getting bought up and staked longer, that can be redeemed. That can allow you to redeem COM just for staking. Right now, the current rate is about 6% of the stake in dollar terms you can get back, and you can convert that into whatever. You could convert it into stable coins, you can convert it into HEX, and then get more HEX. That's up to you. But that's the whole point of the system, is it's a reciprocal loop of trying to incentivize longer staking behaviors and price positive behaviors. All right. And that's kind of, so it isn't free. It's just somebody came in because the opportunity was ripe for the taking, and they set up this coupon system.
And can I ask a pretty simple question here? When you guys say that there's 6% cash back, is that referring to the amount of COM that you can mint at the beginning of a new stake, or over the entire life of the stake?
Great question. It is focused on what you can mint at the beginning of your stake.
Nice.
And just to briefly cover that, the way that the rewards pay out, you actually get to mint 2 rewards over the lifetime of your stake. You get your initial reward for starting your stake, and then you get another reward when the end of your stake comes due, if you've actually served the term. So at the start of your stake, you're going to get 25% of the value, and I should say up to 25 because it's only the 15-year stakers who actually capture the 25%. So they get 25% of the initial value of the overall reward. And then by the end of their stake, they get the other 75% of the reward. And again, that only applies to the 15-year stakers. If you're at about 1 year or less than 15 years at all, that 25% is incrementally lower as you lower the stake length for the start reward. Then the end reward, you just end up with 100% of the reward after the end of your stake. And in this system, you have 30 days. I believe it's 30, but if I'm incorrect on that, it's very close to 30 days after the stake was due that you are able to claim the reward. But the reward must be claimed before ending the stake. Just like with Hedron, if you're aware of Hedron, that reward must be claimed before the stake is end.
Exactly.
And you guys can put a pin in this for later if it takes us too far off topic. But my limited understanding of COM, because it's like I did it when it first came out, and then I haven't really interacted with it much since. Was it was important to stake that early claim bonus because it contributed to a debt. Do you want to talk about that later, maybe, so we don't kind of derail what you're doing now?
Yeah, I do just want to touch on that. What I'm calling the secret weapon, this secret weapon, and I'm calling the ticker for it SWPN. That is the plan to set this into motion and activate it as an automatic marketing system. And then I would say that COM is the coin that supports that plan. And so when it comes to some of those deeper details into the debt system and things like that, that doesn't fit the purposes of what I'm presenting here. But there are some intricate parts of the system that basically makes it so that you are incentivized to continue staking longer and continue restaking in order to capture the highest rewards in the system. And so that debt portion of the system that you mentioned, it applies to how after ending your first stake and claiming your reward for that one, it's in regards to how it's going to pay you out after you've ended that stake. And I heard a little bit of reverb there. It sounds like it's corrected. Yeah. So yeah. And Toby, did I miss a part of your question there?
No, that's fair. It's yeah, the debt system and all that is like kind of more just calm. But as far as using that initial claim to be able to do, like Axis said, go into stables, buy more HEX, whatever, that it's kind of what the focus of this is what I'm understanding. And that makes a ton of sense, because it's like, you're getting this free coin that you can just rotate right back into HEX, which you can then stake and then claim more COM. So it's kind of like this crazy circular, it's almost kind of like a money printer on top of our money printers.
Hell yeah.
Yes. And that's the part I didn't touch on, is the staking part, actually. So I'll touch on that real quick. So in this system, there is staking in the system, but you are not able to stake coins that you've already minted and already hold liquid in your wallet. The only option for staking is when you are going to initially claim your reward. So when you're going to claim your reward for setting up your HEX stake, you are faced with a question of what percent of the coins that you'd like to mint and what percent you'd like to stake. And once you make that decision is set and it's done with, because you do not have the option to come back later and apply a stake afterwards. And then the staking pays out about a 5% APR. And that 5% APR does not apply until after your first end stake. And so if you can imagine making a 15-year HEX stake, and then you come to claim your COM reward and it asks you to stake it, and then you decide to go ahead and stake all of it, well, you're not going to start earning that APR until after the 15 years has been served from your stake. And so it's reinforcing the restaking and the time commitment and the duration that we want to promote in order to have HEX be a healthy staking system for the long run.
And I think that was a key component that I was missing. Not being involved enough with Com until you had made it resurface, was that, you know, a lot of that big supply number on the Com total supply is actually exported out in the future in the same way that a HEX stake is, right? And that's a key element here to why this system is possible to function, right?
Definitely. It's a lot more scarce than people would imagine.
Mm-hmm. And then too, and then, you know, my market maker mind is like, you know, then it's ripe when it's super cheap and there's only potentially 25% of the supply out there, right? Relative to the max lengths. Anybody that's staking short for the reward isn't really getting a meaningful amount at these prices. And anybody that stakes super long can only get 25%. So it really sets up like a one-way track for higher prices for Com, as long as there's steady or increasing demand.
Definitely. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's a really important aspect. And actually, as I go through this presentation, I just want to make it very clear that the main focus is going to be on that initial start supply, that 25% that you get for starting your stake. Because the way that I looked at this system is that future reward of getting the remaining 75% of your reward out into the future, I'm looking at that as negligible for the purposes of what we're accomplishing here. And so, you know, further details on that can be kind of revealed as more of this is, you know, digested over time.
Yeah, I really like the complexity of all this, that I'm still learning so much about HEX and how HEX can be even better. You know, the Bitcoiners, they say Bitcoin, you know, it's always going to be the same, but I guess the Hexicans can update their worldview from time to time.
And have a lot of fun. We
Yeah.
get to play with some fun systems in HEX.
Mm-hmm.
And not to shit on Hedron at all, because it's like, I think it's a great product and to, you know, kind of go hand in hand with HEX. But, you know, one of the things that I found interesting about Hedron is it was kind of giving people a get out of jail free card, right? Because it's like on their longer stakes, they could do HSIs. And then you're not really committed to like seeing that all the way through, because then you could tokenize it and then sell that HSI, right? So with this, it's
good
it's
point.
Yeah, it's like this is reinforcing like the behaviors that were the original truth engine, right? The original thing about delayed gratification. So this is not only like, you know, reinforcing that philosophy, but literally rewarding you for doing it. So it's like, and Com is pretty complex, no pun intended there. And you know, I'd encourage people to dig into it and learn a little more. Crispy tried to help me a little on the very beginnings of it to understand. And the short version, like the too long didn't read for me, was like, just stake it. Like, just stake it for now. That's the way you want to go with it. And then like when your stakes end, if you're, you know, I've luckily not had to cash out any HEX at this point. So, you know, he said, you know, when your stakes end, he goes, just the way to keep it churning is just to stake longer. Right. And which is what I'm doing anyhow, because as my stakes end, I'm throwing them to the end of my staking ladder. So that all goes hand in hand with Com, which is just like, you know, cherry on top. So, but it's nice how you're breaking it down, Jonni, how, you know, because you can get in the weeds with this about the debt system and like how much you can and can't claim later because of how much you chose to stake on the front end. Whereas, you know, just kind of parsing it out to this beginning portion, which is using it as a marketing tool, which is a great way to frame it, is brilliant. So I'm really liking what you got cooking here.
Totally. Yeah. Very, very brilliant, Jonni.
Yeah. You know, I've had a lot of fun discovering this and exploring it. Now I just can't wait until everybody really, it just clicks in everybody's head, because I know we're going to get there. I just know it's going to have to gain some traction just in everybody's minds. You know, just to touch on that aspect of it real quick, this coin is 11 months old. It was launched back in January. And so, you know, it took a lot of time stirring this around in my mind about, you know, how this actually works and how to bring it to life as to the potential of what it can be, and even figuring out what that potential is. So when I was initially looking into it, What initially clicked in my head was that this serves as a coupon. But where it gets deeper is how we resolve that coupon into actually organizing as a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, where we as HEX holders can come together to promote the HEX system to become a healthy system as far as healthy liquidity, healthy staking behaviors, and onboarding new users by getting them to use the system. So that's what's exciting about this. So yeah, if there's no other questions here, I'll go ahead and continue.
I think just one last comment, and you can go right into the next slide, was that, while all these factors that we just spoke on are happening, the T-share rate every day is increasing, which is going to make the amount of COM that in the total supply, its inflation rate is going to get smaller and smaller over time, right? So on a long enough time frame, COM does get really, really scarce because everything ties back to the T-share.
Correct. So you can imagine in time frames, because the inflation will last forever, but when you parse it out into time frames and you set goals for those time frames, it becomes very easy to measure out the requirements and what's needed to get this to do what we want it to do. Which, in my opinion, what I want it to do is I want it to grow the average stake length in HEX. And so one of the issues that we have in HEX right now is that we began the system seeing the global average stake length rising. And then as we kind of got through the initial wave of demand from the early HEX holders, the stake lengths started diminishing. And I have some data that I can show that clearly shows that the number of HEX stakes that are opening on a daily basis are diminishing, as well as the time lengths of these stakes are also diminishing, and they've been diminishing for years.
Dude, there's another whole element to this equation, which is, I can speculate on it, even though in my gut I feel that it's right, which is that the market is paralyzed right now by the bear market. And so the bear market itself has shifted focus on shorter and shorter time frames. And what this is setting up for ultimately in HEX is the ultimate squeeze where so many people get left behind and the price goes so astronomically high and everyone loses most of the supply that they would otherwise dump at 10 cents, at 20 cents, at 50 cents, because of the amount of adoption that's not being accounted for. People are grossly misunderestimating the amount of volume and new buyers that we will get over the next 5 to 10 years, because people's time frames have been warped. When I mean people, I'm talking about like legacy Hexicans. Like their mind is completely warped by the way things have been for 2 years and not how they're setting up now for that big rubber banding effect that's coming. And so it's a shot across the bow. It's a warning for you guys that this is coming. It is coming, and because there's a tremendous amount of value in somebody new coming in down here, sub penny levels on EHEX and around 1.5 cents on PHEX, to absorb so much supply that they become a titan in the space, and they can game this yield for themselves, and they're going to do it. Someone's going to make the market, and whether it's an ETH whale or it's going to be, who is it going to be? I don't know. It's going to be RH. I don't know, but yes, the staking behavior has trended backwards in a lot of ways, but that's setting up for a similar situation as what I'm seeing in the ICOSA and Hedron contract, which is ICOSA and Hedron are really going to get legs 5 years from now or 7 years from now, after the great culling that occurs on year 7, when all of these longer term guys exit in the middle end of the next beginning or middle of the next bear market, where these guys are going to start killing off their 10 to 15 year stakes and nuking all their Hedron 10x minting bonuses. And so all of these systems that may seem one way or the other on the surface, some people said COM has no value. Some people now are saying Hedron ICOSA has no value. It's all going to have tremendous value after this rubber banding effect happens on HEX, because it all comes back to HEX in the end. So I'm just excited to see where this all goes. My gut is that nobody can predict how amazing this system is going to play out a decade from now, and so I'm excited to see what you got for us with the secret weapon, man.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, Axis, you took the words out of my mouth, man. It's like it's the same psychology that makes a bear so bearish, right? Like people are scared to buy red candles. So it's the same deal with staking behavior. You know, it's like if you're uncertain of like what's going to happen in this cycle or the next, you know, you're a little reluctant to maybe throw something out there 15 years. Whereas when we first started, you know, we were all starting off with a 15-year stake and then building our ladder backward and then taking those early stakes and throwing them to the end. So, I mean, technically now I have stakes that are 18 years in the beginning, right? So it's like, it's a psychology thing, you know, and it's as that shift happens, as we flip from bear to bull, like you said, there's going to be different players that have positioned themselves well by not being fearful and taking advantage of the opportunities that we've had at our feet for months now.
Yeah, and remember too, like the only people that gets inflation in HEX and thusly inflation in COM and inflation in Hedron and Nicosa is the guys that believe long term. They get them. Yep. They get the lion's share of the inflation. So the long term believers are the ones that win this game the hardest. Now you got to survive 10 more years to really be the king shit. But if you can do that much, you know, it's going to be pretty amazing. You know, call it forward vision or whatever you want to say.
Yep. And then I threw a little thing out there on Twitter yesterday or the day before. Like a light bulb finally went off in my brain, because it's like there were times where, you know, your Hedron was like less valuable than it would cost you in gas to mint it, or your COM was less valuable than what it would cost you to mint it. And then it's like finally it's like, well, wait, it's like, why not take that gas you were going to spend anyhow and then just buy COM or buy Hedron? Because eventually it's going to go bonkers, and you would have spent that money to end that, or to mint that COM or Hedron at the time. So it doesn't work as well with HEX.
That's a cool point.
Yeah, there's TShares involved. So it's like, you know, the same doesn't necessarily hold true for HEX unless the gas is so much that you could buy more HEX and end up with more TShares than you're letting bleed out. But if you're just looking at things like COM and Hedron, it's like if the gas is more expensive than the value of what you're looking at trying to mint, just go buy it. Just go buy it and squirrel it away. Because it's like, as Axis was saying, and everyone on the screen understands, these are all derivative plays of HEX. So as HEX goes up, it's going to pull all these other things up with it. So right now it looks like it's nothing, but it's like, it's not always going to be nothing. There was a time in the you know, not too distant past where a mid-level dolphin was making 5 figures a year in USD on Hedron. So think about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun games to play, like we mentioned earlier, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm glad we mentioned all that. It's like the market dynamics. But first of all, I do want to mention quickly that I've some of the comments that I've received, some of the feedback is that COM is competing with Hedron. I want to dispel that right now. It is not a competition with Hedron because it is a completely separate functionality. Again, COM is functioning. The end goal, the end game with this is to become a decentralized automatic marketing network. I don't think that COM serves that function. I don't think that Hedron serves that function. Hedron's function is a borrowing and lending market. So just want to differentiate between those two. The other thing I want to touch on what Axis mentioned about the market dynamics and how they're coming into play. What's really fascinating with the data in HEX is that it shows that when the market was at its frothiest is the time when we were seeing the most stakes being made and for the highest lengths of time. So interesting.
Yeah, if you go back to May of 2022, I talked about that. You guys remember the deep dive video? Maybe some of you guys that were around over a year and a half ago, but inside of there, we talked about that very thing, right? Say what you just said again about
right, that when we were seeing the market at its peak, that's when we were seeing the highest and longest stakes opening.
Right, that HEX is a Veling good, so it's like a luxury good. Like when it's, and the same thing happens in Bitcoin mining or Ethereum mining back in the day, where as prices are rising, cost of equipment goes up, people buy more equipment, they hook it up, yields rise, they start making more money. They're printing more money on a daily basis. Equipment goes up in price. People keep buying it. Demand grows. Same with staking and HEX. Like as HEX goes up in price, more people buy it from the market. They push the price of HEX up. They stake it. they start seeing those yields go up. They're like, damn, I should buy more. Damn, I should stake longer. I should buy more. I should stake longer. And it's this reciprocal loop of when things are in demand, it goes up in an exponential parabolic rate. And when things are out of demand and we're in a bear market, it's the complete reverse, which is, and we also had with HEX the other factors of a completely new blockchain launching and a doubling of the supply effectively with the stock split of HEX and every other coin, and then the hundreds and thousands of sacrifice phases. I mean, this HEX, as HEX from Ethereum saw the biggest dilution, I think, of any successful coin I've ever seen in my life. So it did the 10,000x, and then all those gains got distributed amongst hundreds of projects. So you're never going to see the minus 99.95% ever again. You're never going to, that's in HEX, you're never going to see that again. This was like a one-time thing, unless we get like a Pulse Chain 3.0 or something, which, let's just not even go there.
That's a hot take. I like that.
Yeah, it goes to say that mindset is very important when approaching this. We're seeing a lot of penalties, emergency end stakes right now, and when you see Bitcoin rising and it's up to 35K now, it may be time to start switching your mindset into a more positive one as far as the future growth of crypto.
Claim your com before you EES. That's how we'll know it's not a hack.
Well,
hopefully hackers aren't listening.
Yeah, right. That's one of the things I was saying. As far as people that were looking at, they're on the borderline of over leveraging themselves, right? It's like people talking about selling property or taking out loans to to buy HEX at various levels. The math of all that is basically, it's like if the interest rate on what you're borrowing is less than what you can make and what you're investing in, then it might be a good way to go. However, you have to know that you've got enough cash flow or enough liquid assets to make those payments for as long as it may take, right? And I think that that's where you're seeing people EES and do these panic sells and stuff because they over leverage. They bought more than they could afford to buy, right? I mean, what's the old adage when you get anybody into crypto, don't invest anything you can't afford to lose. Well, that's a simplified way of saying it, but it's just math, right? If you take out a loan to try to buy crypto, that is risky behavior. However, if you've done the math and you can afford those payments indefinitely, and you're confident that your yield is going to surpass what interest you're going to pay on that loan, this could even apply to the lending protocols that are coming out with liquid loans and other things. So do the math, and you will avoid these situations where it's like, oh shit, I retired too early, or I took out too much debt to try to capitalize on something that hasn't materialized yet. But a lot of these people are being shaken out. They're going to be replaced by people that are a little more prudent with their investing strategy and their money management. And that's only going to create a stronger market, because if you've got more savvy investors coming in, they're going to be less likely to have the little floppy salad hands, right? So
don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Right. Sorry, suckers. No, I have compassion for those people. Just be smarter next time around.
So Jonni, why com?
Yep. So we want to market HEX automatically. Listen, Richard Hart has been banging the drum on this forever. We've been trying as a community to figure out ways to do the best onboarding, get the message out, the best way to do that. Well, what better way to do that than to park your money somewhere and it does it automatically for you? That is what this system can do. And all that is required is that it gets the amount of liquidity that can sustain, sustain basically a rolling snowball, sort of a buildup of an avalanche of more and more onboarding that comes in as the liquidity grows in this system. But we get to start from the ground floor with very low risk levels because this coupon rate that I mentioned right now is currently at 5%. And we're going to get to a point in this presentation that I'll continue with where you're going to see why 5% coupon rate is too small, guys. This system should be getting more value. So if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and Go to the next slide.
I can't wait for the highest of stakes version where Crypty Girl says she can buy a whole house in cash from her com gains. That'll be cool.
Same. I can't wait. I also can't wait to see Lamont Black teaching this.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Good point. Good point.
Level. This course is getting more and more complex, right? It's like he just is doing the HSI stuff and all that currently. Now you're going to throw this on his lap. Like his students could, I mean, heck, they could be the next whales coming in, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's teaching some of the best and brightest, some really exciting stuff. This is how it all starts.
All right, so let's go through it. The next slide here that I have at the top, title is SWPN and the ChEX Fusion. Okay, I'm calling it a ChEX Fusion because I am not looking at this as two separate coins. I am literally looking at this as a fusion of two coins becoming one. And as we go through this, you'll see why I'm calling it that. SWPN is the ticker for secret weapon. And you'll see later on where the ticker SWPN has relevance to this system. Because remember, the token that supports the plan is COM, but the plan itself is the secret weapon. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go through here. So this secret weapon and the ChEX Fusion has two functionalities that I'm looking at. Okay, the first functionality is to serve as a virtual repo market for HEX. Okay, so with sufficient liquidity injected to create a floor price in COM, the ease of projecting the floor price can have COM act as a repo market for HEX, where the mintability of COM that would result in sell pressure on the COM side would result in net buy pressure on the HEX side, as long as the coupon rate is below 100%. The ability to create the floor pricing in COM hinges on COM receiving a large backing to activate COM as an automatic marketing system for HEX. So backing COM to create a floor price incentivizes the market to speculate on the coupon rate that COM gives to HEX stakers. And this sparks more interest and more demand into both HEX and COM, creating a positive feedback loop that acts as a buy and burn on the HEX supply. Optimal allocations to balance the losses on one hand with gains on the other hand is what facilitates this virtual repo market. The virtual repo market has been activated. So I have gone to the phux.io platform with various weighted HEX COM allocations with pools named secret weapon with ticker symbols labeled as SWPN. And I'll be showing that soon here in the presentation. So that's the first functionality is to serve as this virtual repo market for HEX. The second functionality is to serve as that decentralized automatic marketing network. Okay, and that to me is the end game. We want to get to that point, but it's going to take higher coupon rates to get to that point. So with floor pricing in place, now you have a market where the floor pricing creates a hyper low risk speculation zone to buy into. And the market should have no problem trending COM up versus HEX over time due to this effect of the floor pricing. The more the value of COM increases versus HEX, the higher the coupon rate goes, which in turn increases the marketability of HEX by giving more incentive for new stakers and new onboards to buy and burn HEX off the market in order to claim their free COM. Any questions with that?
A comment and a question. Just to clarify on the buy and burn, it's not that HEX is literally being burned. It's just that it's being staked out so far. It's taking it out of the liquid supply, just in case people get confused about that, right? Okay. And then the other part is like, check out the private chat. This is the second experience I've had in this stream where I feel like great minds think alike. If I could be so bold to say I'm a great mind along with you and Axis and Maddie, but But, you know, with the FUX system, hey, Buck, if you're watching, maybe incentivize.
PHUX. This is a family show.
Yeah, PHUX, right. But the FUX system, Buck, if you're watching, incentivize that com pool, right? And then, you know, get some PHUX incentive tokens being given to those liquidity providers.
Yeah.
And actually, I just got some feedback from Buck yesterday.
Nice.
That he is going to, or he has already approved this for eligibility for the PHUX rewards. So we should be seeing that next week.
Nice. So did I get it in the wrong pool?
I believe he's targeting the 80% com, 20% hex pool.
Okay, cool. Well, and then maybe I did all right. If that was me.
As we go forward with this, I don't want anybody diving into that pool because
no.
as I go through this presentation, why that may be a high risk pool.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay.
What is it? Caution is the better part of valor, right?
Not sure.
I think that's the quote, but yeah, basically means be cautious, right? Don't be too brave and end up being a bullet sponge. You know, be sensible with LP and things of that nature. Take access as first before you dive into that.
You could definitely get folks in the system who just look at it immediately. They see it at a 5% coupon rate and they say, well, this deserves to be at 100% coupon rate some point in the future. Let's just throw it out there. And if they don't mind, you know, the time frame, you know, they have they don't mind waiting however long it takes to get to the 100% coupon rate, then go ahead and don't even worry about any of the pools. You would just go ahead and buy com and leave it dormant. Okay. So coupon rates and the power of the decentralized automatic marketing network. Okay. So I want you to imagine that the floor price for the coupon rate was set at 5%, meaning that anyone who stakes HEX for 15 years gets 5% back as a redemption for their stake. This floor price would exist because all of the existing stakers who get to claim their free com can all exit. And the only way at that point for com to inflate and reward more coins would be for new stakes to be made. Now, what if I told you that 15-year HEX stakers get 50 times higher coupon rate than 1-year stakers, and that 2-year stakers get twice the coupon rate that 1-year stakers get, and 15-year stakers get about 3 times as much as a 10-year stake? So 15-year stakers are the ones who enjoy the most motivating reward by far. What this system creates is a decentralized automatic marketing budget that gets funded by speculators of com, and those same speculators of com are incentivized to speculate on it because the target audience is users who already have staked HEX, who want to see users bring more value into HEX so that they promote growth in liquidity. It becomes a speculation on what the customer acquisition cost is, and the speculator of com is speculating on what coupon rate must you provide to a new user in order to get them to buy and then burn HEX off the market, thus increasing the value of HEX while also providing more liquidity to HEX. And since this market would have enough initial liquidity to provide a floor price, there's no reason for HEX holders not to speculate on how much free HEX you can give to a new user to come along and increase their HEX value.
Quick comment on this. So I'm just figuring with these kind of figures in front of me, I'm trying in my mind to poke the holes through it. And when I'm doing that, I'm trying to figure out what is the sweet spot where longer stakers, like what year are we in now, where longer stakers are getting their end stake com bonuses, right? Because you can't claim the com, the latter 75% of the stake of com until the end, right?
Right. Correct.
Right. So I'm trying to find that sweet spot where the overhead sell pressure is so tremendous because there's so many 10-year stakes coming off. And what's the runway between now and then? Is it, and because this just started this year, I'm seeing it to be like anywhere from 8 to 10 years before that even becomes an issue with that, with these guys that are going to have the longer stakes, that are going to have enough supply, and how much the price would be up at that point. I mean, this is just setting up for a huge move higher, right? And you know, if this is the overhead pressure just isn't there until sometime in the 2030s.
2029 is the year where we start seeing those big 10-year hex stakes from back in 2020.
Oh yeah, because the COM was retroactive. It did go and act on original stakes. Okay, I remember now. Yep. Okay.
Now they have to make it to the end of their stake. So keep that in mind too, that they cannot emergency end stake and capture that reward.
Mm-hmm.
And I would actually, part of my speculation personally is that most people in the future will not make it to the end of long stakes, like 10-year to 15-year stakes.
Yep.
And that is because we have a system like this where it's going to eat up so much hex supply and send it so far out into the future that it might not even make sense for people to actually make it for the legacy
To get
staker
to the end,
to
yeah.
actually make it to the end of their stake.
Yeah.
Because the market would need actually more hex liquidity for sale to actually have a healthy market.
Yeah,
So
I see it as one of those situations kind of from a different angle where it's like, you're right. Most of the people that's going to make it to 2029 with the COM and get that 75% more, the amount of gains that kind of long-term believer should have in laddered hex stakes and all the other stuff up to that point should cover them enough that most of them will opt not to just market dump the 75% of the COM, because at this point the system will be so robust. Not to say that they won't. Some people may. I mean, we may get a huge bear market around that 2029 to 2031 area. We might, and some of those guys might decide to dump. But I think that a lot of my concerns are kind of like washed away with this in mind, just because of how much hex is going to grow between now and then.
Well, and also as the coupon rate climbs, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, it seems to me like it would be an incentive for people to take that, buy hex, and just immediately throw it out 15 years, because then they can just come back in and get more COM, as you know, because that inflation or the coupon rate's so high. It's just like, I don't know. I don't want to get over exuberant about it until I like really dig in and learn about it more. But this is I'm like what I'm
COM
I
takes
like
care
what
of
I'm
a lot of the
here.
negative. COM takes care of a lot of the negative externalities that Hedron had. All the problems that Hedron has, COM solved in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yep.
Until that inflection point for Hedron where it gets the upgrades, right? Anyways, let's not dive into that. This is about COM,
Nah.
but they
Right.
both have their place. But right now, COM's got the edge in terms of like immediate need for
Right.
the what's best for hex.
Well, and a lot of the zealots out there, which I would kind of include myself in this, as far as like the hex philosophy about delayed gratification and and the truth engine. I mean, guys like Balliet Brand spring to mind. It was a little deflating when we saw like this get out of jail free card option come up with, because even before Hedron came along, there was talk about tokenized encapsulated stakes, and that was a heated debate, if you guys recall, early on. And there were a lot of different people talking about maybe doing their own. I think even like Kareem was talking about doing something at some point, and a lot of people just felt like it was an affront to what we had kind of signed on for, as far as like what this was supposed to be about. So in a way, this kind of brings people back to like the essence of what Hex is about. And it's to this point, from what I've seen, it's like it seems undeniable that this is a huge fundamental. Right,
100%.
for doing the right thing. Like you're literally getting rewarded for doing the right thing.
This is setting up for a situation where hex becomes so valuable that it stops becoming the topic, and what becomes a topic is a situation of, HS size versus COM. Basically, like the value inside of the HS size, the hex, right, is going to be so valuable that it will bring value to Hedron and Icosa, and at the same time, COM will have brought so much value to hex. The debate will shift away from, is hex going to make it, to where's the next best place to go to get value in either COM or icosahedron is it just a native hex? Like, it's just going to be such a robust system. I just see it as like this triplicate of price positive stuff that's being built out, right? Anyways, back to the presentation.
So I keep going back to the example that I experienced this week with my Halloween stake coming out. And I know you guys are conceptualizing the coupon rate based on somebody brand new coming into the system. But I think the entire supply of HEX that exists now and in the future is the current holders. And so if those holders change their behavior and start locking, time locking all their HEX all of a sudden more than they normally would, that creates a huge supply shock on the system in HEX and could be price positive. And so, my example of having 1.4 TShares coming out, that cost me $86 back in 2020. And so my coupon rate, and this is actually the way I was thinking about it, was, oh, sweet, my EHEX is worth $210. That covers my Ethereum cost to end the stake and puts me in profit. My PHEX was literally free. And so, of course, I'm going to time like that for Quattro Cinco, which I'm not sure I would have done before I could have gotten $50 in liquid COM. Because if COM does a 7.5x from here, then the value that I have in liquid COM is more than what my HEX stake was worth at $369 today. So I think that's a really powerful system to not only incentivize new people, but to have maybe even like a lower coupon rate if people are thinking of how much money they put in when they originally got their HEX. That would be another reason to stake long and use COM.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna see all the later on here. We're gonna get to play with some of the numbers in the spreadsheet that I have, and
Sweet.
You'll get to visually see kind of the dynamics at play here. And yeah, I'm hoping it becomes clear to everybody, because it's so what's going to happen here is, there's probably going to be some kind of growing pains as to gaining traction with the education about what the power of this is. But whether or not there's education around this, it's kind of an inevitability where it would gain its traction just from everybody realizing that this thing is very strong as far as the ratio in pricing versus HEX. And you'll see that over time, and it's already showing up on the chart. So the story could kind of tell itself, but I'm saying, why not go ahead and expedite that story? So yeah, let's throw fuel on the fire and
right on,
basically. Make sure I'm not missing a slide here. Okay. So yeah, continuing on with the coupon rate and the power of the automatic marketing network. The effect of growing the global average stake length by adopting this system can spark the volatility needed to break HEX's value out of a downtrend by reducing the liquid supply of HEX and by promoting HEX to a larger audience by creating this decentralized automatic marketing network. And it becomes the first automatic marketing system to exist in all of cryptocurrency because it hands out free airdrops to new stakers. Many airdrop systems in crypto, they have to actually choose who's going to receive airdrops based on certain behaviors. In this system, that those airdrops are actually available for anybody in the world. And that's a beautiful thing about this. All that is needed for COM is enough liquidity to be injected into it to create a floor price. Its price currently sits at about a 5% coupon rate for new 15-year HEX stakes. But since 5% isn't enough to attract the new customer, the market should be able to easily push the price up to a very high level. For speculation, for example, 70% could be the appropriate coupon rate. And that would be a 14x price rise in the ratio of COM versus HEX. but it could go even further than 70%. It could go all the way up to 100%. The lower the coupon rate stabilizes at, so the lower, so if you look at this as a customer acquisition cost, you would say, okay, if we're stabilized at a 5% coupon rate with high volume and high activity, then you could call that our customer acquisition rate or acquisition cost. But if it has to go up to 70% before we start seeing the increasing average stake length and the increasing number of opening stakes, then you could call 70% the customer acquisition cost. But when it comes to that dynamic of figuring out where that customer acquisition cost is, the lower that customer acquisition cost is, and the lower the sustained coupon rate is, the more value has to come into HEX in order for them to claim that rate. So that's a very important aspect. We'll see more of that as we continue. So just to finish here, so again, the lower the coupon rate stabilizes at, the more impact the HEX Fusion has with its ability to generate growth in the value of HEX. This is because a 5% coupon rate means that a staker has to burn 20 times the value of HEX in order to claim 5% back. Whereas if the coupon rate is 50%, then the new staker has to burn twice the amount of HEX to claim the 50% back. Now, this is a little poll I did on Twitter a while back. And I put this out and I asked, how low would the price of HEX have to go in order for you to happily make a 15-year HEX stake, a 555 stake? Okay. This poll showed that the results were poor. Okay. However, that was actually the intended purpose. Okay. So let's read through this. The coupon rate income helps to speed up the price discovery in HEX. I ran a poll on Twitter and asked what price point HEX would have to be for them to feel good about opening a new 15-year HEX stake. The poll results were poor. However, that was the whole point. I expected to see this kind of result. The results were clear that the current sentiment in HEX is low, and prices would not only have to be significantly lower to interest new long-term HEX stakers, but most people would never even consider doing a 15-year HEX stake to begin with. This data reveals that the coupon rate in COM would have to be very high to incentivize a new onboard to stake HEX for the long term. So essentially what that actually means is that since we're at a 5% coupon rate right now, that's not enough to onboard a new 15-year HEX staker. And so that means there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity in the price rise that COM can see. Oh, and just FYI, this poll was conducted when PHEX was at a price of $0.007.
This is going to be awesome to look back on. It's going to be so awesome.
All right, so we're gonna have a little bit of fun here exploring the coupon rate and the pool allocations from the SWPN pools on the PHUX platform. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the spreadsheet. And as I open the spreadsheet, some of the questions that we want to consider is, what if the HEX price falls, okay, and goes down, approaching, just going down, while the COM price stays the same? And what if the HEX price rises while the COM price stays the same? So let's go ahead and bring up the spreadsheet here. And it's going to want me to zoom in to see that better. But before starting with this screen, this would be the whole spreadsheet. Let's start simply first. So I'm going to go to this tab here. And basically what you're looking at here is just representing this section here. Okay, so we're just zooming in on that. Okay. So what I have here is a list, a table of values. We have the number of.
Can you zoom in just a little bit more?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I'll just scroll down. Yeah. So first column there is the number of days that the staker is choosing to stake for. Okay, it goes from half a year all the way up to the 15-year mark at the 5555. Then you have the corresponding years that they're staking for. And then the highlighted column is the coupon rate that applies. Now, what I have this set to right now is because for the purposes of just introducing this spreadsheet, these numbers do not matter. We are not at a 100% coupon rate right now. We're at about a 5%. But this table is showing the 15-year HEX stake at the 100% coupon rate. And what I want to point out is how much more a 15-year HEX staker gets in its start coupon reward than, say, a half a year staker or even a 10-year staker. Okay. So as we look through this column BU, the additional year multiple on the claim, what this is saying here is that a 1-year HEX staker is getting 4.4 times as much COM rewards as a 6-month staker. And then you have the 2-year staker is getting 2 times as much rewards, 2.4 times as much as that 1-year staker. And it goes on, and you can see the rise per year. But overall, what you're looking at here, this 15th year, I'm comparing this to the first year. The 15-year 5555 staker is getting 51.4 times as much COM rewards in the start coupon as the half a year staker. Actually, I believe that's the 1 year. Let me see. That's 51 times as much as the 1-year staker. And just for fun here, I'm going to compare the 15-year. So I'm just going to change this number. I'm going to compare it to the 10-year staker for everyone to see. And so a 15-year HEX staker gets 3 times as much COM reward in the start coupon as a 10-year staker. And so if that registers, what you notice is that this is heavily promoting long stakes to a large degree.
So I got a little piece to add here. For a lot of the OG Hexkins or like big money stepping in to Hex for the first time, when you start approaching that, like, you know, double-digit millions of Hex, you know, a lot of those guys are going to do short rolling stakes because they don't want to export out all of their opportunity cost for the bull market, let's say. But so one strategy that I've thought of that might be effective for a lot of them is if they are going to opt to do this 15, 30, 45 day staking ladder with something, let's just say arbitrarily, let's say 10 million Hex stake. By staking 10 million Hex for 45 days, let's say, a little over a month, you'll get 100,000 Hex back in yield. Now, if you take that 100,000 Hex on when you end the stake 45 days later, and then you export that out 5555, now you can start to create these longer distance ladders with free money that was free to you, and you only had to give up opportunity cost of like 30-ish days because you could kill the stake halfway if something happened price-wise and you needed to act. But in the meantime, you can still let that 45-day stake go. And then when it ends, like, that's 100,000 Hex that you can put out. And right now the APYs are looking like that can turn into a 480% increase in Hex terms. So it is worth it for you to, you know, if you do that for 90 days, now you're going to eventually find that 245 stakes, a couple 100,000 Hex, you export those out to 5555 stakes, you get the coupon back. That's 20% more on the 200,000 Hex. And that 200,000 Hex will turn into a multiple of somewhere around 2 million Hex. Because the average APY is going to be around 480-ish% right now, but we expect that to rise with the share rate as staking behavior improves. So it's kind of, when you really break down all these numbers, if you're following what I just said, there's opportunity for you here and now to have a big bag of Hex, to stake short, to then take free money and stake long and benefit from the coupon rate and support both short and long and keep yourself the most leverage over Hex as possible. There's so much inherent game theory here, and it's so deep rooted, and there's so much opportunity that I think it gets lost on most people.
That's a really cool strategy. I like that. The whale strategy.
Kind of best of both worlds with that. And then, not to beat on HSIs, but something to be aware of. And I had to go back and double check just to make sure I wasn't talking through my hat. It's only native stakes that are available for that comms that you get comm for. So, I mean, if you make your HSIs, you're kind of forfeiting your opportunity to participate in the comm bonuses.
I think, don't quote me on this, but so right now that's kind of like a cool decision that you have to make. But there might actually be comm functionality being added into the V2 HMI contract so that ultimately it will all come together.
Oh, wow. Right on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Another best of both worlds situation, gives people the flexibility with an HMI, but still be able to participate in the automated marketing comm situation here.
We should talk to Dibcatcher about getting that built into like a perpetual Quattro Cinco Maximus DAO product.
Yeah, I actually almost messaged him last night to recommend putting that, on the Icosa app where because I know a lot of people now that haven't participated with the HEX server thing are using that as their front end to end stakes. And it reminds you to stake or to mint your Hedron. Well, it wouldn't hurt to have a little reminder there to go mint your comm.
Good point.
Yeah, it'd be great to see that. I think I saw some data from ChrispyMan that about 9% of all of the newly opening stakes are HSIs. So yeah, don't quote me on that either, but I believe that was the data point on that.
Actually, we should ask Alex to leave it off of his front end so people can use the link hexcommunity.com because this bear market's been pretty hard on me, guys. Pretty
Go
poor
support
over here.
President Maddie live stream.
Maddie's worthy of that referral bonus.
I think
it's 1%, right?
It's I'll allow it.
I don't think it costs you anything. It's 1%. Yeah, that would otherwise be wasted. So
yeah, and actually, what's funny is like I've had people that are confused by that, thinking it's that 1% is coming out of theirs. It's not. You still get 100% of what you are eligible to claim, but then 1% of that goes to whatever referral link you choose to use. Maddie's is a good one.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, imagine this, right? We have an automatic marketing system mixed with a referral program. So if you think about it now, you end up with a sales team who basically kind of gets to have a 100% conversion rate as long as that coupon rate is high enough to attract new users. So it's very, very, very cool. Now, just touching on this last point on this table here, this last column. So I was mentioning the difference between the coupon rates of the long-term stakers versus the short-term stakers. We also have the difference between how much value gets staked in HEX in order to capture the coupon. And so if somebody, for example, at a 100% coupon rate is staking HEX to get the coupon back, that actually, since it's a 100% coupon rate, means that they get the 15-year stake absolutely for free. And so this last column here is showing the multiple of HEX that has to be staked in order to earn the coupon. So in the case that we're at a 100% coupon rate, it's a 1-to-1 ratio where the amount of HEX being staked is the same amount of HEX that's being claimed. But again, that's at the 100% coupon rate. And then as you go lower and you go to, say, the 1-year HEX stake, well, the amount of HEX that they have to stake in order to capture their reward is 128 times what the reward they're getting back is. So they have to stake 128 times as much HEX as what they're going to be claiming back in rewards on the comm side. And then you start to think, well, at what point is it not even worth it to even go ahead and claim the reward? If you're really going to put a stake out there short term for, say, 6 months or 1 year, your reward back in the form of comm might be so low that you might not even bother to mint it. And so you could look at that as some sort of a kind of limiting factor on the supply where, you know, in some ways, users who are staking short might not even be interested in the claim at all. And so they're not inflating the supply of the system because of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and touch on some more points in the spreadsheet. Now, I'm going to open up the whole spreadsheet here. Kind of the way that we're viewing it, since we're on the screen here, some of it may be hard to see, so I'm going to have to navigate around the spreadsheet a little bit. So I hope that everyone can follow. But let's go over to it, and I'll try to walk through some of this stuff here, and then go through the main points. So over here is kind of where I toggle the metrics that I want to play with. Okay, so we have the price of COM. Now, COM is a coin that has a very large supply in the quadrillions currently, and that is going to be an ever inflating supply. So with the supply getting larger, you can imagine that these small numbers can get even smaller. So this is a number in scientific notation because of how small it is, because it's got 10 zeros before the first digit. So it's the current price of COM in dollars is 10 zeros and then 438 currently, but that's based on the 100% coupon rate. I kind of inflated the number just to show us at the 100% coupon rate. So that is not the real current price of COM. That's what the price of COM would have to be to get us to the 100% coupon rate. Okay. And then we have the current price of HEX, where when I plugged it into this spreadsheet was at 1.4 cents. Okay. Then you have the dollar value of HEX that we're going to be staking. And we can just play with that number and make it up as we go. And then you have the amount of money that you would get back for a 5555 stake. Now, the reason that I want to focus on the 5555 stakes is because when I say the word coupon rate, the way that I want you to interpret that, well, when we look down the spreadsheet, that's coming up weird. Okay. Well, when we look down the spreadsheet, there's actually many coupon rates depending on how long you're staking. So going back to the staked years and days, there's many of those. So even though there's various coupon rates for various durations of the stake, when I say coupon rate, I'm actually speaking only to the 5555 HEX stake, the 15-year HEX stake. And the reason when I mention that I'm only speaking about the 15-year stake is because I believe that the limiting factor on this system is the 15-year HEX stake getting to the 100%. Because once you start to go beyond 100% for what the 15-year staker can do, not only does that mean that they get the HEX stake for free, the 15-year HEX stake for free, but any amount of value beyond that 100% coupon rate can be arbitraged down, and it can always arbitrage the price back down to that 100% rate. And so for that reason, when I say coupon rate, I'm talking about what a 15-year 5555 HEX staker gets back in their reward. Okay.
Makes sense.
Then we have the share price. That's the other factor at play in this system. Okay. All right, and then we have the amount of HEX that is being staked. And for our purposes right now, I'm going to go ahead and ignore these sections here. I'll just go ahead and actually black that out just to not cause any confusion. Okay. And then right here in column C, we have the COM HEX ratio, the pricing ratio of COM and HEX. Okay. Now, you'll see that I can go ahead and plug in the current price of COM, and this coupon rate is going to react to that price change. So it's currently at 100%. Let's go ahead and use the current price of COM, and that's going to give me the actual real-time coupon rate right now. So that price right now, for what I'm looking at, is going to be 10 zeros with a 0.3043, and I'm going to get rid of the multiple that I had on it that took it to a 100%. And now we're going to see the real current coupon rate, and it is currently at 6.9%. Okay. So one of the questions we wanted to answer here is what happens when the HEX price rises while the COM price stays the same? And then what happens when the HEX price falls while the COM price stays the same? Now, what we want to look at now is where the secret weapon that I've been talking about comes into play. And that would be in this table here. Okay. Now, again, as we walk through this, if any of this is not registering, keep in mind, again, this is sort of like an engine and what's going on under the hood. Again, it can be simplified. So if any of this maybe doesn't make sense to you right now, the message does become very easy once the community starts to understand what's going on here. Okay. So in this table, I've developed based on whatever the current coupon rate is, what would be the optimal allocation between HEX and COM? And the reason we can come up with an optimal allocation is because once you have a certain amount of liquidity in the system backing COM, it becomes easy to determine what the floor price would be. And then based on that, you can determine what a good allocation for purchasing COM would be compared to what you retain in HEX in order to make it so that you have, you're taking on minimal risk while simultaneously supporting a system that promotes the automatic marketing of HEX. So that is the purpose of this. And this is the all-encompassing plan that I am calling the secret weapon. Okay. Now, as we look through this, we have the prices of COM, we have the coupon rates, we have the multiple of HEX value added. Now, this column here is going to show based on what coupon rate you're at, and I'm just going to zoom in just a little more here. This column here is going to show based on what coupon rate we're at, how much value does the staker have to stake in HEX above and beyond what they're claiming on the COM side. Okay. So right now we saw we're at about 6%. So that would be between 5 and 10. So let's just go to the 5%. And if you're at the 5% coupon rate and you allocate accordingly, then what's going to happen is any user that comes to claim COM had to put in 20 times the amount of HEX into a 5555 stake. Okay. And then as you go down, you see how this is affected as the coupon rate climbs. So a 10% coupon rate means that 10 times the amount of HEX has to be staked to claim that value in COM. And then as you get all the way to, I'm saying 99%, I'm going to zoom in a little more here, then it's 1% more HEX value being burned than what is being claimed on the COM side. Okay. And then I have these optimal allocations in this column here. And so it says that, for example, if you're at a 5% coupon rate, then the optimal allocation would be 95% HEX with 5% COM. And then as you go up the coupon rate, as that coupon rate rises, what you'll see is that it's actually calling for more and more COM in the allocation. And then as you get up to 99% coupon rate, it actually calls for more COM to the degree of at 99% allocation to COM and only 1% allocation to HEX. Now, this aspect where it's calling for more and more COM in the allocation as the coupon rate rises, this was very fascinating to me while I was discovering this, because I would think that as the price of COM is rising and therefore the coupon rate is rising, inherently in my mind, I would think that that means that risk is increasing because you have higher prices, higher risk. Well, in actuality, this is actually saying that it's the opposite. it's actually telling you that as the coupon rate rises, your risk is actually getting lower. Now, the reason for this is because the way that this system works is it's sort of a rolling snowball of liquidity. Because when we're here at this 5% coupon rate, we're not just saying go all out and buy COM. What we are saying is, since we're at a 5% coupon rate, it's saying put 5% of your COM in. And the reason it's saying put 5% of your HEX into COM is because that 20x multiple here balances the equation where it says the amount of HEX that has to be burned ends up being a multiple that lets you lower your risk. So this column here, the value going to HEX for the COM claimability, this is a validation column, okay? It's basically saying the equation is balanced for each coupon rate, okay? Now let's just play with this number real quick just to give a visual on what's going on here, okay? It's saying to keep your risk low when you're at a low coupon rate. And the reason it's saying to keep your risk low by only allocating 5% to COM is because the fact that you're at a 5% coupon rate is telling you we don't have enough liquidity in this system yet. And so because we don't have enough liquidity in this system yet, if you jump in here, you're actually taking a lot of risk. Even though, so that's why we need to lower the risk and only be at a 5% allocation. Because the fact that there wasn't any liquidity and you would basically be the first person supporting the system, it means you're taking on the most risk. So we need to lower that risk. But then as the liquidity grows in the system, you level up along the way as a DAO. So as a decentralized autonomous organization, as HEX holders, we become a DAO where our goal as the DAO is to grow the liquidity over time. And in that act of growing that liquidity over time, we're also minimizing our risk, okay? Because the amount of COM that can be minted by the legacy stakers who already have HEX stakes out there, okay? That risk is being resolved in the fact that you have other people coming in and helping you with the backing. And so if you're backing with 95% HEX, and then another person is backing with 95%, and then another person is backing with 95%, well, when you're doing that, you're not actually pumping the price. You're actually just backing it at the current price for the most part. Which means that as that liquidity grows and gets bigger while the price stays the same, not only are you creating a floor price, but you're spreading the risk across many people instead of the risk being concentrated to a couple people. Okay. And so we're going to see that over here in this column where it shows based on the current price of HEX and the current price of COM, how much value is the maximum mintable supply of COM based on the current existing stakers in the network. And so basically this column is showing you what is the current liability from the existing HEX stakers who can claim their COM and sell it. And because they exist to whatever degree this shows, that is why if you're the first to come and support the system before we have a large amount of backing, then you don't want to be taking a lot of risk because that is the amount of value that is capable of coming and selling. Okay. The other way to look at this column is that this is simply the maximum market cap of COM based on how much supply can be minted currently or by the existing stakers in the system. And so now that I've touched on all that, I'll go ahead and just quickly give the example on it. So what this is saying is, since we're at about the 5% coupon rate, the maximum amount of supply that can be minted by the currently existing HEX stakers, if they were to all mint all of their supply, then the total market cap of COM today would be $10.5 million.
Is that with existing stakes as well?
That is all existing stakers currently in the system.
That's it? Only 10.5 million?
So remember, that's based on the 5% coupon rate. So that's saying
That's
since
like a
they're
low
only-
cap gem.
Yes. Now,
Surprisingly low. Yeah.
Now, for what we know about market caps, we usually don't need, for liquidity and the amount of backing on a token, how often does that liquidity ever match the market cap? It's never the case,
Never.
really.
I mean, in this case, the ultimate here is that it would only be 25% of that number, because that's all that's been claimed theoretically, right? Or because you're accounting for all future unended stakes too, right? In that number, or no?
Yeah, I didn't look at it in terms of percentage. Right now, the total minted supply is about 85 quadrillion tokens. And when I was looking at this data, the total possible mint, I don't think I have it here. Yeah. The total possible mint, for what I remember off the top of my head, was about 443 quadrillion. So if you want to do the quick math on...
I mean, I'm only interested in what's circulating.
Yeah, the 85.
Because the other shit's not till 2029 and
Well,
beyond.
because there's a portion that's just sitting there. So if you like stake 100% of your COM, you can come along at any point if you want to give up your 5% yield and make it liquid, I believe.
And that this number accounts for those people as well. They're not hidden in this number. It's accounting for them as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so this is where I get excited now. I'm thinking about it from like, what's the circulating, like what's the actual market supply? How much of that is concentrated in, and like we can do the chain analysis if we can actually find out how much of that is concentrated in like real backers, and how much of that is like lettuce hands. And then you can actually come up with an even way smaller dollar amount. I would guess in the realm of like $1 to $2 million probably, or even less. And then that might only be backed by $1,000 of liquidity, right? Or it might be backed by, and it might grow where more OG hexagons might come in and take 2 to 5% of their hex stack and inject that into COM, raise the price of COM, get their own allocation, and then supply their own liquidity, and then grow these pools out over time, which would deepen the liquidity and strengthen it. But ultimately, these are inflated numbers because we all know that the market cap isn't important, right? But what is important is this circulating lettuce supply, right? That's what's important. And we'll get into this later with the e-com example. But for now, I think I'll just sit back and let you keep going.
Definitely. So, if you take stats across crypto and you look at tokens and the amount of liquidity they have versus their actual market cap, that ratio is usually about somewhere between 1% and 3%, I believe. And so imagine taking this 10.5 million number and making it only 1 to 3% of that. So 1% of 10 million is
100K.
$100,000. 3x that for the 3%, $300,000. So these numbers, they're presented here because we need to do the math appropriately and say what is the maximum potential impact of these holders. But in actuality, what the impact would be in reality would be far less than this. And then you also have to consider the fact of how many of the stakes out there belong to systems that really would never dump, because you have OA stakes that are out there. And I believe there's other people in our community who have good statistics on what percentage of the stakes that are out there are OA stakes. And then you have stakes like Godwell, for example, who has some of the largest stakes out for 15 years. Who, in all honesty, I'm not sure if I can imagine that he'd be dumping this. So, food for thought and the imagination when it comes to looking at these numbers is what we're trying to get at here. Is that if you're looking at this as the total max potential marketing budget or marketing expense, well, that number is actually way cheaper than that in actuality.
I think that was what my major point I wanted to relay to the viewer is that number, 1%, and it could even be less because most people are slept on calm or dumped their allocation right away, and didn't even get it forked over or completely forgot. I mean, there's so many situations where it's been left behind. So this is really, it is quite an interesting opportunity for this to be snapped back up now that we have this new system being, people getting educated on this new system and the potential with it for sure.
Doesn't the OA have like 1 million TShares? And there's like 11 million TShares out there, or 10.5, and then Godwell has the same amount, so that's another 10%. So that's like 20% between those two.
Yeah, and I look at a lot of data, but I don't actually look at that data. I tend to not care about that because I don't look at it as an impactful part of the system. So yeah, as I'm sure ChrispyMan, for example, probably has great data on that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Actually, there's 9.7 million TShares, and it's down from 11.1 million just 2 years ago, or a little over 2 years ago. So I mean, we've lost. Well, what is that, like 15 to 20% of the TShares, and it's rapidly declining. And so let's just say another 2 million are diamond hands. You really only have, what's that, like 7.7 million TShares out there of potential sell pressure, maybe? I don't know. Probably less.
That's cool.
And it's showing up on the chart already. If you do take a look at that COM versus HEX chart, it's very clear that there's just not much supply out there. It's not able to, because even with minimal demand, which currently is the case, this has not been a system that has been adopted and supported by HEX holders. It really doesn't have much buy and sell volume. So you have to imagine once volume actually does start coming in and demand does start coming in, it seems to be a very easy chart to send up in price and value.
Yeah, I was thinking like if you said 440 quadrillion was the potential max supply, right? Am I right on that?
That's what I came up with. Mm-hmm.
So you could get 1% of this if you just get a quadrillion. And right now, well, let's see what's on market.
I got 20%. So it's currently 85 quadrillion.
Ooh, he's doxed, boy. Just kidding.
No. I didn't mean I have 25%.
Oh, God.
I meant that currently there's 85 quadrillion tokens minted. And if you compare that to the 440 that I mentioned, that's about 20%. So
and there's only 57 trillion.
20% of what the total.
Yeah, there's only 57 trillion on market. So you can't even get a quadrillion if you wanted. You'd have to go OTC or find somebody who has it. I don't even know. You said how much? Say that again. How many? 20 quadrillion you said? Or 40? It's
Total I'm looking at is about 440 quadrillion that can be minted.
And how much is currently minted?
85.
85. Okay. So yeah, to have 8.5 quadrillion, you'd have 10% of the market. But there's only 57 trillion on the market. So this is going to be like a
wow.
It's going to pecan price is going higher, guys.
And time will force it that way regardless. And, I'll touch on that later because that's a major point in this system.
And man, I was just hoping at some point to be a billionaire. Now I want to be a quadrillionaire.
Quadrillionaire energy.
Yeah, right? It's a lot of zeros.
And so yeah, you can look at this column AN here. You can look at this as either a market cap, or you could look at it as the total amount of backing required in order to secure that coupon rate, the backing for that coupon rate. And when I say secure the backing, I mean secure for the legacy stakers that already exist in the system. It does not secure it necessarily beyond that point for new stakers coming in. We will get to that point later. The purposes of what we're trying to accomplish here is to solve for allowing the legacy stakers to exit. And this is a point I want to touch on. So in actuality here, the fact that we're at a 5% coupon rate is completely unreasonable. Okay. And the reason for that is you have to imagine it like this. Remember that I called it a COM-HEX fusion, where I'm looking at COM and HEX as one coin. If you look at it that way, you have to go back in time and look at when HEX launched, and you have to say that HEX launched incomplete. So we've all heard that HEX launched as a complete system. I'm saying here that with this, there actually should have been more to it, and that this now completes the system. And if you do look at it that way, then it means that when HEX first initially launched, then the users who were buying HEX at the time, day one Hexicans buying HEX, staking it. Well, if you look at this as that it was supposed to be part of the system in a fusion with HEX, then you shouldn't have just been buying HEX. You should have also been buying COM. And what that means is this coupon rate being at 5% makes absolutely no sense. Because if you imagine that you were first buying HEX back in those early days of HEX, you want to support the marketing budget as well. It makes no sense not to. And so if you look at this in the fusion of two coins becoming one, you have the HEX as the product, and then you have the COM as the marketing. And so you would be buying into the product, and then you would also provide funds to the marketing aspect, which means because this only gets minted to stakers, well, imagine this. You buy HEX on day one, you send it out into the future, 15 years. Are you then going to claim COM and then dump it? Because there was no market back then. There was no one to dump to. And so instead of dumping it, what you should have done is you should have been contributing to the marketing side as well as buying into the product. And so that would have meant that the coupon rate should have been 100% right off the bat. Okay. So then you would look at the allocation and you would go down this list and you would say, what's the optimal allocation calling for? Well, the reason that the allocation rises on COM and calls for more COM to be bought than HEX as the coupon rate rises, the reason for that is because why would you not want to throw as much fuel on top of this fire as you possibly can? And so it's saying for every $1 of HEX that you bought, you should have bought $99 of COM. And what that would have done is because you're not sending your HEX out there and then claiming your COM and then dumping it, you are now a buyer of the COM. And instead of looking to just find ways to extract value from COM, you're actually pouring as much fuel on top of the fire as possible and saying, I want to market this thing as much as possible. And so how much do we want to contribute to marketing? Well, you don't really have to think so heavily about how much you're contributing to marketing, because this is a marketing system where you have a 100% conversion rate on the marketing expense. Meaning when you are putting the money into the marketing, that money only gets removed. Okay, that value only gets extracted if a new user came and added more value to the HEX side. So that's a 100% conversion on your marketing expense.
Yeah, what he's trying to say, guys, this is very simple. The only way someone else is coming in here and getting COM to dump is if they bought and staked HEX.
Yep.
If they didn't buy and stake HEX, they don't have COM. If they don't have COM, they have to buy COM from the market. buying COM from the market pushes COM up. Buying HEX in the market pushes HEX up. They stake it. They get COM. They can dump the COM, but they still helped HEX. This is what he's trying to say. Is it seems pretty foolproof on the surface. Like I'm looking at the supply I'm like looking at the liquidity pool right now, and I'm begging for you guys to go dump hundreds of trillions, because now I want to be more of a buyer of COM, because I'm seeing that there's an opportunity right now to corner the market while everyone else doesn't understand it, and with a few other diamond handers just take over. And then, like, look, if there's only 85 quadrillion, and you can get, I just looked down there, there's 12 quadrillion in one address. That means that at least a little over, like, with 12 to 13% of it is already locked up in some guy's address, right? And so what's the long term? Like, in the next 3 years, maybe there's an additional 40 to 100 quadrillion that comes on the market, and at this price, it can be absorbed.
Is that biggest address? Is that the Time Pays Me of Jonni Sachs?
That biggest address is the Time Pays Me lock of the Jonni Sachs wallet.
Ooh.
Is
Nice.
locked in supply on a 1% per month trickle over the course of 8 years.
Wow.
Nice.
So to be on page
Well,
1, you need to have 300 trillion COM. So to be a top 100 holder of PCOM, based on liquid holders, you need to have 300 trillion, which isn't that much relative to the. Which isn't, yeah, it's obtainable, but it's only 6x what's available on market to buy. And so there'd be no way you could come in and buy 57 trillion of these, or the price would go astronomically higher, and you'd deepen the liquidity pool.
Tell that to two whales at the same time, you know?
They actually, that's why you had this 170x run up, is because there was two whales fighting over this tiny limited supply. Yeah, very, very cool, man. Very, very cool. Props to you for discovering this out.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely, yeah. Of course, I know there's a big hurdle with getting people to understand the system. However, rest assured, the actual end result here is simply just saying purchasing COM is highly valuable, so why not? Okay, so going back to the beginning of HEX, when you're considering making your first stakes ever, and you were buying HEX all that time, well, those legacy stakers who made those initial stakes, they never contributed to the COM system the way they should have, because if they were, then 99 times more value should have went to COM than what went to HEX. And the reason for that is every dollar that goes into COM becomes a long stake. And so why wouldn't you want to take 99% of your value, put it into COM, open that up for new onboards who are automatically going to come and take that because they see the value of this free stake they can get. And then you're growing your user base, okay? And in doing so, they had to put enough value on the HEX side and stake it to where it takes your 1% allocation and grows the value of HEX according to what they just staked for 15 years. And remember, what they just staked for 15 years was 99 times as much value. But now you're the one sitting liquid, not them. So
there's another element here that hasn't been touched on, because Stizzy Jones asked, what do you do with COM after you buy it? And I think your answer is going to be you sit on it liquid, right?
Absolutely. It does not make any sense to be dumping this coin. It is completely
Hold on.
unreasonable.
I might have another option. So there's also the option that, let's say you got COM today at this price, and it starts to be adopted, and we go from 4,000 wallets to 8,000 to 12,000 to 20,000. And during that period of onboarding into COM, you decided to take your COM that you got from your stakes or from market buying at this price today, and you paired it with HEX, and the HEX price starts to rise, and then the COM price starts to rise, and COM starts to outpace HEX's price growth. And all of a sudden, you're DCAing back into HEX with COM that you got at this price through LP. So there's actually added incentive for you to back the coins in the liquidity pools, deepen that liquidity, and then if COM has a period where it outperforms HEX, you're converting your COM back into HEX at better and better rates. So there is, it's not, yes, there is, maybe you want to sit on liquid to have like a steady bag, but then a portion of that should be allocated to the LP pools, in my opinion.
According to the allocation as well. As a matter of fact, that speaks to the market, the functionality that I mentioned was the virtual repo market functionality. Because, yeah, you know, you can decide to either support the system by simply never selling, which means you're also not part of the liquidity pool that is adding pressure to the adding pressure to the price. But if you do want to have some benefit at the same time, well, yeah, you can provide liquidity, put your tokens up for sale by being a liquidity provider. And then because the backing should be so large as a collective effort from everybody, you should be at such a low risk zone that you get these instant, the instant payment of the, remember this multiple. So you remember this multiple here. If you're at a 5% coupon rate, they had to put 20 times as much HEX, burn 20 times as much HEX. And if you're at 99, they had to burn 1% more HEX. Well, that differential there makes it so that whatever value you're putting on one side has to go down on one side, but up on the other side. And if there's enough backing, you can stabilize the price to where you're still just earning fees for being the liquidity provider at this very low risk price range. And so you are, you know, earning fees to the degree of, I don't know, 2% to 5%. You know, when you think of a repo market, these are not supposed to be very large yields, but this is for big money players to take advantage of. And when you think about the backing that's required, you would want to think of that in terms of big money backing this because they want to support the system, promote the growth of HEX while also earning some liquid yield. And it works in favor of that big money. And if the amount of backing, there's a threshold here in this system, which we're going to get to, but there's a threshold somewhere in this system, depending on the price of HEX, where once a certain amount of backing comes into the system, you can create a scenario where the HEX chart is forced to be up only for, you can imagine, a 15-year period where it is completely gobbling up supply, but that supply that's being gobbled up is also becoming gains in the value of HEX. So this big money that would want to back this system, they're taking losses on the COM side as people come to claim it by staking and claiming their rewards. They're taking their loss on the COM side, but the amount of growth and value on the HEX side from the people who are staking to capture those rewards can be balanced out in a way where their loss is actually not a loss because it's only a loss on that COM side, but the actual total value is the same because what happens is you have, remember, this is a COM-HEX fusion. So we're looking at the market caps between the two coins and the amount of HEX. So if you think of, instead of you have a HEX market cap and a COM market cap, you just look at the two market caps combined as one. Well, the amount of HEX that's being burned is higher in value than the amount of COM that's being minted, as long as you are below a 100% coupon rate. Now, I know that might be difficult to follow, but basically, this is a system where you shouldn't ever really spend much time ever above 100% coupon rate. And because of that, it means that more value is always being burned than what is being added to the COM supply when you look at the market cap of the two coins as one combined market cap. Always more value being burned than inflating and minting.
Powerful stuff. We got 182 people watching live, thousands on the replay. hit the like and subscribe button. And I've
Okay.
got links to all the speakers, their YouTube channels, their Twitters, everything in the description below. I always put a lot of effort into keeping that information as current as possible in the description for every single video. So make sure you check that out.
So we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. I got a few minutes left. I thought maybe this would be a good area to capstone kind of everything that's been talked about. I think we touched on a lot of important layers to this, and without, you could probably, that would probably be a good point to just let everyone kind of sit on that and ruminate, and then maybe the advanced strategies would be something that you think of, you come back on another stream with Maddie and kind of talk to that later.
How does that sound, Jonni?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. I would, I think this is something that should be reiterated on several times. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have a much better understanding. I think the holes in my understanding of it was just forgetting about simple things like the 25% redemption is what you get off the bat. Thinking about how little resistance is overhead, considering the current price, current circulating supply, current distribution of holder counts. All these things in my mind are setting off all these triggers. That's like saying this is a great opportunity. I have a sense for picking up on these things if once that they click for me. So I would say that 5% coupon rate. This is a good area to get exposure if you don't. It's definitely exciting. You did a lot of really good work here, and maybe we just kind of quick touch on what the whole thing about e-com on Pulse Chain is all about.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. That's something that I think a lot of people might find unexpected, or they would like the game theory behind why e-com on Pulse Chain is performing differently than com on Ethereum.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the same thing, right?
So I'll pull up the price chart because this e-com existing on Pulse Chain is a totally separate asset from e-com, communists on Ethereum. And I want you to think of it in that way because of certain limitations of the Pulse Chain bridge. So I'm going to pull up the price chart, and then we're going to talk to how this e-com on Pulse Chain strengthens p-com, because without there being a connection there, it becomes a pump and dump, and I'll explain why.
When something comes in from the bridge, it gets assigned a new contract address. And so that's important to remember as well, that if you just looked at the com price on Pulse Chain, that it has a different contract address and it has a different price than the bridged in com from Ethereum that's on Pulse Chain. So, and then there's a third, well, in some cases there's a third contract address, but if something was there before the fork, then it might have the same contract address on Ethereum as it does on Pulse Chain for the forked version, but not the version that's been bridged in.
So I'm ready to pull up the screen share if you want, and we'll talk about the technicals, and we'll talk about like why this is the way it is. So this is the e-com bridged in from Pulse Chain chart. Now, why is it important to make that distinction? Well, so in terms of the limitations of the bridge, when the admins of Pulse Chain created the bridge, there was a certain limit set for the amount of any token that could come across the bridge. So there's a unit limit, and that current unit limit is 1 trillion units of any ERC20 token coming across the bridge per day. So in a 24-hour period, there's a limit of 1 trillion units of a token coming across the bridge. So why is that important for e-com on Pulse Chain? Well, that's important because there's currently an existing supply of roughly 56, 57 trillion e-com on Pulse Chain. And we can now know that there is a specific amount of e-com that can come out per day, that being 1 trillion can cross the bridge and come to Pulse Chain per day. So this now makes a situation where it's a super scarce, fixed, and predictable inflation rate, because there will only ever be 365 trillion more e-coms existing on Pulse Chain 1 year from today. How do I know that? Because the bridge limit is 1 trillion. Now, could the devs come in and could they change that limit? Yes. But would they, the first thing they're going to do when they go to Richard and say, hey, everyone's complaining about the bridge limit and the 1 trillion is, he's going to say, don't touch the bridge because it's literally housing $95 million of money, right? So I think the existential risk of that limitation being changed right now in the immediate is pretty low. So what that does for ecom living on Pulse Chain is it gives it a tremendous headroom of huge price moves. And the reason why that's possible is because the maximum amount of sell pressure that can hit the chart per day is limited and it's calculable. Now, if you factor in things like low liquidity and consolidated supply into market makers' hands, this thing can probably go to numbers that you couldn't even believe. And so what is ecom's role in the secret weapon? It is one simple thing, and that is it is the extra nitro booster to gather eyes on the com brand. That's it. There will be opportunity here for a small cohort of users to get the supply here at these prices to maybe back it at higher and higher price floors, because we've actually seen the amount of holders on this coin triple since before this big pump. So on Sunday morning, November 5th, there was this breakout that occurred off the base here to the highs. We saw an 8,200% move from the base to the breakout of that next candle to the peak. So what is that, roughly an 83x from this base here to this
My
peak?
thumbnail's wrong, man. I'm gonna have to update it.
Right. And we saw the liquidity pools grow from just a couple $100 up to like $5,000-$6,000 in the pools, because this move was so explosive. If I go down to like a 1 minute chart, you'll see how amazing this move was. Actually, maybe go to a 5 minute, more easier to read. Yeah, so you can see here, this was just a crazy move, right? Now, why was this possible? Well, I suspect that whoever accumulated inside of this pennant, this is a technical pattern called, I mean, some people call this an ascending triangle. It's kind of rough. I would say more of it's a trading range where it kind of built up this pennant and then it broke out, retested this zone and went higher. So this is typical of a bullish explosive impulse, a consolidation into a pennant, and then a secondary leg higher, right? You get the breakout, retest, and resumption of that level. So that technically it performed as it should, right? So now, in addition, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, what is this for PCOM? Well, in my mind, this is an opportunity for these market makers to get eyes on the communist brand and create an opportunity for speculators to make money on a new trading range and create new price floors. And maybe we have new long-term holders and adopters. Maybe if we can predict that there's 365 trillion coming out in a year, and every day somebody buys up that trillion because they want to get more of that 365 trillion per year, then it becomes like a one-way track to accumulation into a new range and then a breakout to new highs. And then every time there's a new breakout, it's a next cohort of users comes in, and like I said, we saw holders triple. Now, there's an additional property to this that is going to be less understood, but I just want to kind of briefly touch on it before I get off here, which is that if enough ecom is paired to enough pcom, and the ecom price overperforms to such a massive degree, even if it's low volume and low liquidity, it can have the effect of pulling up the pcom price with it. Now, why is that possible? That's possible because Hart's law and bonded liquidity. So where do we see this? Where else do we see this? Well, we saw this and I'm just going to pull up the axis chart because this is a perfect example of Hart's law happening where otherwise no other chart has performed the same way. So like, let me pull up Hex Fire and Axis for a second to show you why this is possible for ecom and pcom. Now, let's see here, Fire Pulse. So hopefully this is the right one. Okay, so you can see the actual chart structure is the exact same. So this is a 4-hour chart. Let me go to a daily. Here's a daily chart.
Yeah.
Here's a daily chart. You can see that the actual curve is the same explosive blow off top, the huge retracement into a new second leg, the cup, the handle, the breakdown. Same thing on axis, the huge curve shape. If I go to 12 hour, it'll show the wick to the peak, the secondary top, cup, handle, breakdown. So the reason why this was possible is because Axis and Fire's bonded liquidity is deeper than both of their bonded liquidities to Pulse or any other coin on the network. And so if you can create this relationship between PCOM and ECOM where it's so deep, the less liquid thing will affect the other more liquid thing. Because of the ratio changing, it's just the mathematics of the ratios of the coins in the pair changing relative to each other, not the amount of liquidity getting pumped in and out, and not the amount of volume. Volume and liquidity have nothing to do with the ratio. Because if you have a coin with $1 in it, paired up against a certain amount of coins, and you put in another $1, well, you doubled the liquidity backing it, and you took half of the other side out. So you 4x the price. So you can 4x the price of a coin with a simple $1 add to the pool if the pool's existing backing is only $1. So I know I'm saying this off quickly, but I want you guys to come back and re-listen to this over and over and over again until you get it. But I want to bring up this one specific example of a time in the Axis chart history where Pulse chain affected it negatively, and it's right here. So on this candle here, this doesn't look like much, guys, but this candle right here, the price of Axis was at $10.95, and it fell down to a price of $6. It was a 41% fall. But the amount of volume that went through that was actually only about $80. I'm seeing 105 here. So $105 of volume came through, and it caused a 40% collapse in price. Well, why was that? Well, let's look at the date, 31st of July. Well, what do we know about the 31st of July of this year on Pulse Chain? What happened?
SEC.
SEC. So Pulse Chain falls 60% instantly, and it pulls Axis down 41% just with $100 of volume, just because its main pair and only pair was Pulse at that time. So what's more important than anything else in this game of Uniswap V2, fork pump proven technology, and PulseX is bonded liquidity. And I hope that this has been a valuable lesson of why ecom pumping can be very price positive for PCOM going forward. It especially is true if we can get a significant amount of ecom paired with PCOM. Now we know that we can do this crazy stuff because it's very limited in supply, and it will be limited and predictable. And so, keep your eyes on the comms. One of them is more for marketing and opportunity. And at the end of the day, whoever's going to get their comm across the bridge from Ethereum every day, that's 1 trillion limit, it's like a lottery, man. Someone's going to make money. Good for you guys if you do. But the more people that adopt one of the comms and adopt and assimilate into this strategy, it's just extra things to play with, extra opportunities in the ecosystem, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
It's really cool.
And to reveal it for everybody. Very cool.
Thanks for breaking down your insights.
You betcha.
I like it. I like it. I have to go back and listen to it at half speed, but I like it.
Yeah, so I like this a lot because I look at the COM and HEX fusion as COM serves as automatic marketing for HEX. And I love this added kind of mechanic that Axis revealed here, because now COM has its own form of automatic marketing as well because of this. So we're gaining a lot of power here, and as far as what we can do in our ecosystem, it's very cool to see.
Now, this might be too deep of a question at the end of the stream, so we might need to shelve it for another time.
Are we at the end?
I'm imagining that with the pools, say over on the FUX system, PHUX system, that it adds an extra layer of complexity because it's not just two coins that are paired. So if you're looking at some of the COM pools that are there now, there is one that's PCOM and PHEX, I believe. And then there's another that's EHEX, PHEX, ECOM, PCOM. So, and I guess the question would be like, in that scenario, if you're trying to raise all four, is that a pool that you would also want to stabilize?
I think I know what you're asking. You want to take this one, John?
No, you can go ahead.
So to say this simply, those bigger pools with more, like the balancer pools with more options in there and more things tied together, those are going to be more helpful in the heat of the bull market where everything's coming up together, right? Right now, and just specifically speaking to the ecom pcom thing, just having them paired against each other in whatever the current ratio is actually more helpful for that specific use case. But then in terms of the coupon redemption stuff, that's actually more useful is paired up at those certain ratios inside of PHUX. And in terms of like where should this all land in terms of other coins being added to the pools, like the hexes? Anytime that ecom goes up against PCOM, that raises the price of PCOM on the Pulse X side of things, let's say, for example, it will have an effect on those other PHUX pools, but just it's going to be less effective at pulling up HEX, most likely at this stage, because there's just so much in that pool kind of binding them together. And you also have to get like whoever's making the transactions to push through that they use an order router that's going to, like Pitius, that's actually tapping into those PHUX pools, or they'll get left behind and then they'll have to be arbitraged manually. So, and that's all short term, right? But it's a complex thing. I think the key here is that you need to have very specific design intentions when setting up LP pools to get the desired outcome. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to set the guardrails up so people don't have to do any of the legwork thinking about what to put their money in terms of LP, but to just know where the best places are actively. And maybe that's something, that gets thrown on a website somewhere, is like, this is how much the allocation should be on this specific PHUX pool for PCOM HEX today at this current rate. This is what the risk reward is of putting it in this pool. This is where it should be. And this is where the market's saying the coupon rate should be. Because that'd be good for everybody, and it kind of takes out a lot of the extra guesswork.
Yes.
Right
And so did you have something there, Toby?
No, I was just saying thanks. That intuitively, that's kind of where my head was at with it. It made more sense to just in this early stage, just the PCOM ecom pairing and let it do its thing. And then longer term, there's the broader pools that pull in the PHEX and the EHEX would make sense, when we're in the throes of the bull. But yeah, thanks for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Do you want me to share your screen, Jonni?
Yes, please. So I'll go ahead and go over this because the
just zoom in a little bit more.
Sure. There we go. So in accordance with this secret weapon plan that I've developed, that spreadsheet that I showed, I went ahead and assigned or created these pools labeled as secret weapons. So they're kind of branded as secret weapon pools. And there's various pools for each coupon rate. It goes in multiples of 5. So it starts at 5%, 10%, 15%, all the way up to 100%. So as you go to the PHUX platform and you go to the pools and then you search for PCOM, you're going to see the various pools that exist. Now, Toby's question was in regards to the mixed pools with lots of tokens in them mixed with PCOM. Those are not pools that I've created. The pools that I've created for the secret weapon involves only HEX and COM paired together. But they are paired in various allocations according to what the optimal allocations called for. So, for example, since we're at the 5% rate, you'll go down here, and when you're searching for PCOM, you'll search for your secret weapon pools. So here's the 10% pool. You can see that it already has $17,000 of liquidity in there, and it's with 97% allocation to HEX and 3% allocation to PCOM. And then if you go to the 5% pool, it has less allocation to COM. It has a 2% allocation to COM and a 98% allocation to PHEX. That pool has nearly $2,000 in it. So what it looks like here is that since we're already kind of tracking the price above the 5% rate and heading towards 10%, it looks like people are front running the run to 10% coupon rate. So they're filling up the 10% pool more than the 5% pool. Okay. But you'll see the various pools as you go down here, and you'll want to look for the ones that are labeled as secret weapons. So we have secret weapon 5%, secret weapon 90%, 95%, 100, 85. Sorry about that. So you see all these pools, and what you'd want to do is you would want to know what the current coupon rate is based on the common hex price, and that information hasn't actually been released yet. As to how you would personally, on your own accordance, figure that out. It does require the math from the spreadsheet. So I am going to be publicizing the spreadsheet in the Com chat room. Once I actually need to go and do a tutorial video on the spreadsheet. So I plan on doing that. And once I complete a tutorial video on the spreadsheet, I then plan to publicize the spreadsheet so that anybody can use it for themselves. But also I can see a future where we would want to have third-party websites that kind of make this easy for the user to navigate and figure out what is the current coupon rate, and kind of simplify that for the user. So
yeah, I think that's totally given me flashbacks to, like, long ago, back in 2020, early 2020, mid 2020. Bree and Juan Hernandez came up with a great hex staking ladder spreadsheet, and then I helped clean it up, and then we pushed that out all over the place, and I talked on streams about it and whatnot. And then ultimately, Kay made stakehex.today, and so that, I think, was just a huge thing for people to see the value of those longer stakes, so you could play with the sliders and you could see like where the price would be. So man, if there was like a webified version of what you've got so far, so people can see that and then know like what the current rates are, the coupon rate, but then they can play with like, okay, well, if the coupon rate goes to this, this is what the outcome would be with this type of allocation of assets.
I was going to bring up how Tobiwan used to be known for his spreadsheets.
You guys all surpassed me, so it's like I'm happy to pass. I'm happy to pass the torch.
Thanks for the super chat, Ryan Lopez, $20 super chat. Com will be huge. A tokenized T-share that is extremely rare. The slower the velocity, the higher the value. Appreciate you, one of our OG Hexicans.
Ryan Lopez, check your DMs. I'll be DMing you soon. I'm going to be coming to visit.
I want to go visit in Brazil.
Yeah, I thought he was in Colombia. Well, maybe I'm not coming.
Is he in Colombia?
I think he's in Colombia. If he's in Colombia, I'll be visiting.
Nice. There was one other question here that I wanted to find from His Excellency that I think Jonni would be great at answering. The question is, we've seen Hedron and Icosa not fully kick into gear to their ceilings, I think due to the nature of derivative and complexity to newcomers. Do you have the same concern here? Great mechanics, but too advanced, ?
Sure. So I don't think that Hedron's issues, the Hedron Icosa ecosystem, I don't think its issues stem from complexity. I think its issues actually stem from being premature in the market. I actually think Hedron Icosa is actually before its time. So I'm not being critical on the system. I think what Alex created is very innovative and something that is needed within the Hex ecosystem. But it's just before its time. And the reason that I think it's before its time is because when you think about the way that the market is made in that system, the market is supposed to be made by liquidations. And when you think about a market being made by liquidations, how does that become sizable? Well, it becomes sizable by many people borrowing, but that borrowing market doesn't really exist yet. Nobody is putting their hex up for lending to any large degree. And then even if they were putting it up to a large degree to be lent out, the market is only made by the liquidations. So you would be counting on the losers of the system to make the market. And so that's why I say it's before its time, is because we're not at a point in time where we should have a bunch of borrowed, hex that needs to be paid back, but then liquidated so that users can come along and get discounts on on future stakes. So I just think it's just before its time, and we don't have a market that's large enough for that yet. So that's my thoughts on that. So I don't think it has anything to do with the complexity at all. Going back to the statistic that I think I saw from ChrispyMan, that about 9% of the newly created hex stakes are HSI stakes. So I think that speaks to the fact that it's not necessarily complexity that's stopping people, because I think 10% is a pretty good number of HSIs being created. So yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with the complexity at all, actually. And when it comes to complexities in the system, there's always there's always those people who are going to figure out those systems, and they'll be first to do it. And big money can be first to that, and then the rest just follows.
Hey,
So,
Jonni, to add to that, it's like TShares. Like, how long did it take all of us to kind of wrap our heads around TShares? And then that was really a part of good onboarding, right? To teach people the value of TShares. So I think it's just a matter of updating the narrative on how you onboard, and now that COM is a piece of that discussion, right? So I think it's just a matter of updating how we get people into the ecosystem.
definitely. Yeah, and so I don't think we're going to have this issue with COM, because even so, one of the reasons I mentioned that, early on in this, when we started this stream, I mentioned that I'm going to be covering a lot of mechanics that are kind of the engine under the hood, but you don't necessarily need to actually understand what's going on under the hood. It's important that we lay out what's going on under the hood so that this can be a trusted system, and the people who are able to grasp what's actually going on can kind of show the path or guide people through the system. But it's not even that complicated, in the sense that once the first few people grasp this and come on board, it's just going to really just show its own value on its own in the price chart, and the fact that this is a scarce coin. We're also going to be able to track the opening long-term stakes. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that I planned on bringing up here, is to show the diminished and very low amount of long-term stakes that are being opened with the success of this system. And as we see liquidity grow in this system, you're going to very clearly see the rising amount of hex stakes being opened for long-term stakes, and it's going to show up like spikes on the chart. And so once people see that, it's just going to click very easily. So even though it may need some time to gain traction, I'm not concerned about it being too complicated, because time is just going to take care of that.
Yeah, good point. I think understanding COM in its entirety is a much larger goal than just claiming it and adding value to the system by buying a hex and staking it longer. You can participate in an airdrop or a free claim much easier than you can, understand the complexities of why Hart's law is going to make COM go gangbusters, right?
Right.
Yeah, and back to Crispy's early on tutorial for me, stake it. If you don't quite understand it yet, stake it, because you can end that stake anytime with that early bonus. Just stake it, because you can withdraw that stake. The COM, right. So just stake your COM with that early claim, and then you can unstake that whenever you like without any kind of penalty. You miss out on the 5% you're going to earn by leaving it staked, but then as you learn, then you've got that there waiting for you if you want to unstake it and use it as that pumpamental for the hex price and roll it over into that.
Yeah, once you claim from your hex stake, whether you started your hex stake a long time ago or you start your hex stake now, that generates you a COM bonus. And once you put that COM bonus into your liquid wallet, you can no longer stake it for 5% COM. But if you claim it and you stake it in Com without putting it liquid into your wallet, then you can come back and put it liquid into your wallet anytime, as long as you're willing to give up what you've earned. So that's a really good way of looking at it, to where, for me, even before I understood the system very well, I was leaving 25% in, and then, now I'm leaving 100% in. So
I'd love to get Kodiak on here with Jonni, and just have them kind of expand our minds on
yeah,
all the
that would be
intricacies of
cool.
this even more. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, and he can speak to some of the more intricate parts of the system, like the debt system.
Right.
He can speak to that better than I can.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would definitely be open to coming on stream, basically as much as possible, just to keep the ball
Awesome.
rolling with educating here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and that's the thing too, like with the debt system, just like a little tiny tidbit here, that debt system is also an incentive to stake longer, because if you don't have enough in your debt pool or whatever it is, then basically you're not able to claim your end bonuses. So it incentivizes you to make sure that you have a certain amount staked, which is taking supply off the market, which is helping with the pump of the com price, and then your coupon rate goes up, and then it's my mind is blown.
This is an extremely powerful system. Extremely powerful.
I love it. Well, thank you guys for coming on tonight. We have had an awesome show as usual. Thanks to you guys. And so make sure everybody to follow all of our guests here. I've got their links in the description below. Hit the like and subscribe button. Why don't, just for the auditory listeners, why don't each of you guys go around and tell people where to find you?
Sure, I'll get started. So yeah, you can find me on x.com as Jonni Sachs, and you can find me on my new YouTube channel. Just search Jonni Sachs, space between the Jonni Sachs, and yeah. So far, I've got a tutorial video up there that goes through a comprehensive overview of the Comex Fusion and the secret weapon. I've also got a video of me locking my com supply using the time pays me system, thanks to Maddie Allen.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have done that without that system. I'm very grateful for it. So really appreciate that. And yeah, more tutorial videos to come, because I want to. So my plan was to start out with kind of the comprehensive entire overview. It's a 90-minute video. A lot of people really couldn't digest it, and I understand that. So I'm going to be breaking this down further on my channel with more bite-sized videos. Hopefully I can break it down to 5 to 15-minute videos or so. So yeah, more to come with the tutorial videos. And then, yeah, there's a lot more work to do, but there's no rush here, because, this can gain traction very slowly. And this is not a situation where we're FOMOing the chart and we're trying to just pump it, let's go to 100% coupon rate right now. That is not the goal here. The goal here is to capture the backing of liquidity and create the floor pricing, which means we have a lot of time before we, there's no rush, basically. So, and it all gets carried by the TShares, which I did not get to touch on here, but, we'll touch on that. And when you do start seeing what's going on with the TShares rate when it comes to this, you're going to get really excited, because it opens up a lot of opportunity for the future. And I'll just give the teaser on that point. It actually, and this is a bold statement, but you're going to see this along the way, it actually makes short-term staking in HEX completely obsolete if this system gets adopted. And when I say short-term stakes, I'm talking 1 to 4 year stakes becoming completely obsolete. So yeah, more to come, and stay tuned and keep following, because we really need everybody to understand the power of the system, because this is not a joke. We're taking this to the world. This is HEX showing its true power right now.
Hell yeah.
Nice. I'm primarily on X under Tobiwan _Hexobi. And then here every night under the good graces of Maddie Allen as part of the Game Theory gang, and then get to share the screen with some of the biggest brains in the community. So it's like I'm learning along with everyone else. So happy to be a part of it. and looking forward to learning more.
All right, everyone. Appreciate everyone coming. AccessAlive.com for awesomeness. And check me out on X at AccessAlive. Got a stream coming up on either Thursday or Friday with Crypto 7. Probably just going to be out there
Nice.
being bullish as all Sam Hell.
Hell yeah.
Maybe we'll touch on a little bit of the com thing there as well. Yeah, we just opened a merch store at accessalive.com/store. So if you're interested in some merch, check it out.
Looks good.
Got flags, got gear. I'll be on the Pulse Chain cruise December 1st through the 7th. Hopefully you can make it. You know, if I had not gone to my first ever HEX networking event, which was the first ever Vegas meetup,
Hey.
I would not be where I am today. A lot of the connections I built started or rooted in that original meetup. So if you want to get ahead financially, you surround yourself with the next class of crypto billionaires, right? So if you want to do that, you go to events, right? And you try to meet these folks and learn and just be excited to be a part of the game-changing world of this DeFi ecosystem. Appreciate you for having me on, Maddie, as always. Our
My
viewership is
pleasure.
always kick-ass, and we chew bubblegum, so thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
So get a Trezor in the link below. Get your com at hexcommunity.com. And until next time, stake wisely, my friends, and peace out.
Can you hear my brain sizzling?
Yeah, that's pretty much all the feedback I get.
Right? It'll get in there.
Yeah, that was great, guys. Really a lot of
That was
fun.
fun,
I mean, I got through like eight out of my 28 slides. So
Oh,
there's a lot
wow.
to cover.
More to come. That's cool, man.